I wasn't invited to the family gathering in the house I had helped pay for with my own money. Half came from my savings, but what stopped me cold wasn't my son's silence. It was what happened 2 weeks later. My daughter-in-law stepped into my backyard with a property appraiser, looking at my house like I was already 6 feet under. They thought I was just an old mother they could push aside. What they didn't realize was that I had already started making plans. Eleanor, we decided to keep the get-together small this year, just us and the kids. You understand, right? You probably need your peace and quiet. The text from my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, arrived on a Tuesday morning. I was 64, a retired accountant. I didn't cry over texts. I analyzed them. Peace and quiet meant, we want your house for the weekend, but not you. Ever since my husband died, Vanessa had been taking control, and my son Ryan stayed silent. That morning, something inside me shifted, cold and clear. If I wasn't part of the family, there was no reason to fund their life. I pulled out my green folder. I added up what I sent Ryan every month for the house I helped finance: maintenance, insurance, lawn care. The total could pay for all the trips I had postponed for years. Vanessa thought I was an endless ATM. She was wrong. I drove to the bank. Mrs. Heron, you want to stop the automatic payments toward your son's mortgage? Yes, and close the joint maintenance account. No drama, just signatures. I felt lighter than I had in years. Then I went to the county recorder's office. I called an old friend. Greg, I need a fair market valuation on my property. Quietly, no for sale signs. That afternoon, Ryan stopped by. He looked nervous. Mom, did you get Vanessa's text? The kids have so many activities. We didn't want any extra stress. He couldn't meet my eyes. I understand completely, I said calmly. Actually, it works out well for me. I've decided to make some changes. You and Vanessa should sit down and discuss your finances. He frowned but didn't ask questions. As he walked away, he didn't even notice I had already changed the lock on the garden shed where he stored his winter tires. They thought I was invisible, but I was never the victim they expected me to be. The silence in the house suddenly felt like pure gold. Over the next few days, I stayed busy going through old financial records. I realized I had spent nearly $45,000 over the years on so-called emergencies that mostly came down to Vanessa's expensive tastes. New patio furniture because the old set wasn't cute anymore. Private piano lessons for my granddaughter that she barely attended. Extra vacations, designer decorations. I made a list. No emotional outbursts, just numbers. Numbers were the language I understood best. On Thursday, Vanessa called. Her voice sounded sweet, which usually meant trouble. Eleanor, honey, Ryan said you mentioned something about finances. Was there a problem with the pool service payment? I leaned back in my chair. No problem at all, Vanessa. I simply stopped paying it. Since I'm apparently no longer part of family life, I figured it was only fair for you and Ryan to handle your own luxuries. There was a long silence. But Eleanor, that's not what I meant. The gathering was just this one time. It was a choice, Vanessa, and I've made mine. I ended the call before she could continue. A minute later, I looked out the front window and saw my neighbor, Mr. Reynolds, walking his dog. He was a retired police officer and one of the few people I trusted. I waved at him. He understood immediately that something had changed. I decided to spend the family weekend away at a small rental cottage near Lake Michigan. But before leaving town, I met with Greg again. He already had a buyer interested in my house. They're willing to move quickly, he told me. The property is paid off, so this could be a very fast sale. The thought of trading my large house for a quiet place near the water sounded better with every passing minute. 2 weeks went by. I ignored every call and text from Ryan and Vanessa. Without my monthly support, I knew pressure was building fast. Still, I never expected them to become this bold. One Friday morning, while I was making breakfast, I heard voices outside in the backyard. When I looked through the window, I froze. Vanessa was walking around my property with a man in a gray suit holding a clipboard. They pointed at the roof, the windows, the fence, carefully examining everything. They had actually hired an appraiser to evaluate my house. I stepped outside through the sliding door. Good morning, Vanessa. Who's your friend? For a moment, she looked startled, but then she forced a smile. Oh, Eleanor, we just thought it would be smart to know the value of the property for insurance purposes. Ryan's been worried about rising prices. The man cleared his throat awkwardly. I'm Mr. Caldwell, property appraiser. I smiled politely. Mr. Caldwell, I'm afraid you're wasting your time. This property is not for sale, and my daughter-in-law has absolutely no authority over it. Vanessa's face turned pale. Eleanor, don't be dramatic. We're only trying to help. Help? By arranging an appraisal behind my back? I took a step closer. Please leave. When neither of them moved, I pulled out my phone and called Mr. Reynolds. Within moments, he appeared at the side gate. He didn't need to say anything. His presence alone was enough. Mr. Caldwell apologized quickly and headed toward the street. Vanessa glared at me with pure hatred. You'll regret this, Eleanor. We're your only family. That's exactly the problem, I replied quietly. Real family doesn't push someone aside while still expecting access to their money. She stormed off. And in that moment, I knew the war had officially begun. After the incident in the backyard, I realized I needed to move quickly. Vanessa was not the type to back down gracefully. I spent the weekend sorting through my belongings. I didn't want to drag heavy furniture into a new life. I only packed what truly mattered. Everything else could stay behind. Monday morning, I met Greg again. The buyers are ready, he said. Young couple from Milwaukee. They want the property exactly as it is. Perfect. I signed the preliminary paperwork. The official closing would happen soon, but the deal was essentially done. Later that afternoon, Ryan finally called again. This time I answered. He sounded exhausted. Mom, what's going on? Vanessa says you threw her off the property. We're struggling right now. The bank account's overdrawn. My chest tightened slightly, but I stayed calm. Ryan, you're 38 years old. If your entire lifestyle depends on your mother's money, that's not my responsibility. But the kids... The family gathering was Vanessa's idea, I interrupted. And you stayed silent. Silence is agreement. I ended the call. Then I went downstairs to the basement suite where Ryan stored equipment for his online business. He didn't pay rent, but he certainly used my utilities. Months earlier, I had already warned him to clear the space out. This time I gave him 3 days. I locked the basement door and texted him a photo with the deadline underneath. Surprisingly, I felt calm. Not angry, not bitter, just free. The 3 days passed quickly. Ryan never showed up. Instead, Vanessa sent me a long email calling me selfish and vindictive. I deleted it halfway through reading. On the 4th day, a hauling company arrived with a moving truck. Everything from the basement went into a storage unit under Ryan's name. I paid the first month's fee. After that, the bills would belong to him. Just as the last boxes were being loaded, Ryan's car pulled into the driveway. He jumped out, followed immediately by Vanessa. What are you doing? Ryan shouted. That's my stuff. Vanessa stormed toward me furiously. You old witch, this is theft. I stood calmly on the porch steps. No, Vanessa, this is what happens when someone ignores a legal deadline. Your belongings are safe. Here's the storage receipt and address. Ryan's hands shook as he took the paper. Vanessa kept yelling, but I raised my hand and stopped her. Listen carefully. This house has been sold. The closing happened this morning. The new owners move in 2 weeks. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan stared at me in shock. Sold, he whispered. But my inheritance. You already spent your inheritance, Ryan. Monthly payments, bailouts, favors. What's left is for my retirement. I turned around, walked inside, locked the door, and closed the curtains. Outside, I could still hear Vanessa screaming at him. It was the last time I allowed their chaos into my life.